speed. It's been an exciting week. Catch all these stories and more on Take It Out, only on WION at these times.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond What Is One, and this is World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar. Let's begin with the headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line for Gaza once Hamas confirms a ceasefire will be effective immediately and a hostage prisoner exchange will begin, setting the stage for the next phase of withdrawal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he hopes to bring home the hostages being held by Hamas in a matter of days as negotiators headed to Cairo for talks aimed at putting an end to the war in Gaza. In an interview, President Trump reveals his behind-the-scenes diplomacy with the Israeli Prime Minister, says he told Netanyahu that he had no choice but to be fine with his peace plan for Gaza. U.S. President Donald Trump authorized the deployment of 300 National Guard troops to Chicago, issuing the order after weeks of threatening to do so over the objections of local leaders. Ukraine claims 2 Russian drones struck trains at a station in Ukraine's northern Sumy region, killing 1 person and injuring about 30 others. Officials accuse Moscow of deliberately hitting passenger trains to isolate frontline towns. The party of billionaire former Prime Minister Andrej Babis has topped the Czech general election. Babis, a self-proclaimed Trumpist, may lead a minority government backed by the far-right parties. Massive protests in Georgia after ruling party claims victory in local elections. Police fired tear gas and water cannons at anti-government protesters who tried to enter the presidential palace after opposition's call to save democracy. Kim Jong-un says North Korea has deployed special assets in response to what he called Washington's arms buildup in the south. The U.S. stations nearly 28,500 troops in the South Korea to fend off military threats from the nuclear-armed north. Oil prices rose slightly but post an 8.1% weekly loss, Brent's biggest in over 3 months, amid expectations of increased OPEC plus supply, rising inventories, weak demand, and geopolitical developments. Now, Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line for Gaza, which has also been shared with Hamas. The U.S. president claimed that when Hamas confirms a ceasefire will be effective immediately. In a social media post, President Trump shared a map of Gaza with a withdrawal line. He wrote that once Hamas agrees to the line, the hostages and prisoner exchange will begin, setting the stage for the next phase of Israel's withdrawal from the Palestinian enclave. Earlier in an interview on Saturday with Axios, Trump highlighting his behind-the-scenes diplomacy, including with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said a peace deal in Gaza was close and that he will push to have it finalized in the coming days. In the interview, Trump talked about his meeting with Netanyahu, and I'm quoting here, "I said, Bibi, this is your chance for victory." He was fine with it. Trump added, "He's got to be fine with it. He has no choice with me. You got to be fine." Trump also said that his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was, quote-unquote, very helpful in urging Hamas to agree to the release of hostages, calling him a tough guy and a friend. Earlier, Trump gave a new ultimatum to Hamas to move quickly or else all bets will be off. He further added that he appreciates Israel temporarily stopping the bombing in order to give the peace deal a chance to be completed. However, the Gaza Civil Defense Agency said Israeli bombardment had killed at least 57 people since Saturday, even after Trump directly urged Israel to halt its attacks on the territory. Meanwhile, Trump's West Asia envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner headed to Egypt to finalize the hostage release details. They will be negotiating with Israeli and Arab representatives. Now, Egypt is hosting an intra-Palestinian conference to discuss unity and the post-war administration of Gaza, a diplomatic track that could determine the Strip's future. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he hoped to bring home the hostages being held by Hamas in a matter of days. Netanyahu credited military and diplomatic pressure with compelling Hamas to agree to release the captives.
We are on the verge of a very significant achievement. It's not final yet. We are working on it diligently, and I hope, God willing, that in the coming days, even during the Sukkot holiday, I will be able to announce the return of all our hostages, both the living and the fallen, in one phase, with the IDF remaining in the depth of the Strip and in the areas that control it.
He added that the Israeli army will hold all of the areas that control the depth of the Gaza Strip, and that in the second phase, Hamas will be disarmed and the Gaza Strip will be demilitarized. Netanyahu said that this will happen either through diplomatic means, according to the Trump plan, or militarily by Israel. On the ground, Israel says it will now shift to defensive operations in Gaza, a shift that came after direct pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump. Earlier, the military warned that its troops are still operating in Gaza City, calling the area extremely dangerous and urging civilians not to return, a warning that undermines any sense of an immediate pullback. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's hard-right allies, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, both assailed him for the concessions he has made in order to facilitate Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza. Ben-Gvir threatened that his far-right Otzma Yehudit party would leave the government if Hamas continues to exist after the release of the hostages under the Trump plan. Now, thousands of protesters in Tel Aviv took to the streets, urging the government to seal the deal and end the war in Gaza and bring all the hostages home. And pro-Palestinian protests have also picked up momentum across the world. Thousands across the European capitals took to the streets, demanding an immediate end to the war. In Spain's Barcelona, more than 70,000 marched down the city's central boulevard. Protesters are waving Palestinian flags and chanting "Stop the Genocide." The protests follow Israel's interception of the global Summit aid flotilla that had set sail from Barcelona. Spanish leaders have openly branded Israel's campaign as genocide and called for sanctions. Pro-Palestinian protesters clashed with police in Rome after a demonstration against Israel's interception of an international flotilla trying to deliver aid to Gaza. The protest started peacefully with students, young children, and senior citizens among the crowds. As the march was ending, a small group broke away and clashed with the anti-riot police. Officers used tear gas and water cannons, while some of the protesters were immobilized and detained.
You okay? I'm trying my best not to hurt you.
Here it is.
Up there. Okay. Thank you.
In London, police arrested over 400 protesters during mass rallies in Trafalgar Square. Demonstrators defied official warnings and voiced their support for Palestine. The protest came days after a deadly attack at a Manchester synagogue heightened tensions nationwide.
Palestine will live forever. Palestine will be free.
In Ireland, thousands rallied under banners accusing Israel of committing 2 years of genocide. Ireland has emerged alongside Spain as one of Europe's strongest critics of Israel's offensive, with calls for sanctions and recognition of Palestinian statehood. Portugal saw protesters gather outside Parliament. Protesters chant against the blockade of Gaza. Many carried placards reading "Hands off the flotilla" after activists from Portugal were detained on the aid ships intercepted earlier this week. Similarly smaller but vocal marches were reported in Paris, Brussels, and The Hague, all demanding an immediate ceasefire and the release of activists. As Europe's streets erupt in solidarity with Gaza, attention now shifts to Cairo, where indirect Israel-Hamas talks under Trump's proposal may test whether pressure from the streets translates into peace at the table.
See?
And shifting our focus now, Ukraine and Russia are fighting tooth and nail. From energy grids and nuclear plants to railway networks, all strategic locations are under fire. While Europe is worried over a series of drone sightings alleging Russia of violating its airspace, Russian President Vladimir Putin has slammed what he calls Europe's war hysteria. Now here's a report for more.
Russia and Ukraine are armed to the teeth. Both sides are bringing out their long-range ballistic missiles, relentlessly hammering each other's energy infrastructure and, more recently, railway network. In the latest, Russian drones slammed into Ukraine's passenger train. The strike on Shostka station mangled a passenger train, busting its windows and injuring dozens. On Friday, Russia launched one of its most lethal strikes on Ukraine's gas site. A wave of over 300 drones and missiles evaded US-made Patriot defense system, plunging millions into darkness in Ukraine. Kiev's largest state-run gas firm Naftogaz said Russian attack hit its main gas production sites in Poltava, Kharkiv region. Russia's overnight attack left at least 50,000 households in the northern Chernihiv region.
There was another Russian strike on our gas infrastructure. Just ahead of the heating season, the Russians are seeking ways to do more harm to our people.
In wee hours of Saturday, Ukraine also moved to target Russia's largest oil refinery, with an annual capacity of about 21 million tons of crude oil. So far, Ukraine's drone attacks have knocked off at least 40% of Russia's oil refining capacity, spiking fuel prices and shortages nationwide. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has now become a contentious region between both the enemies. With each side striking near the facility, Russia has warned that the move could turn into a dangerous game.
This is a dangerous game, and people on the other side should also understand that if they're going to play it so dangerously, they still have operating nuclear power plants on their side. And what's stopping us from retaliating in kind?
NATO nations are also decrying airspace violations. Europe is worried that Russia is sending drones to test its defense capabilities. With recent drone sightings in Munich and Denmark, NATO is gearing up for hybrid war. Russia's Vladimir Putin calls European claims a mantra, adding that Europe is whipping up war hysteria.
But the ruling elites of United Europe keep whipping up hysteria. It turns out that a war with the Russians is almost on the threshold. They keep repeating this nonsense, this mantra again and again. I can honestly tell you that sometimes I look at what they are saying and think, they cannot believe in it, right? They cannot believe in what they are saying, that Russia wants to attack NATO. It is impossible to believe in it.
While Russia dismisses European claims of hybrid war, Europe is Ukraine's first line of defense. Russia says being weak is not an option. So with neither side backing down, will Ukraine-Russia's energy war snowball into an energy crisis for the entire region?
Now, billionaire former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš's party has emerged as the top contender in the Czech general election. According to the near-final official results, his movement secured 34.6% of the vote, translating to a projected 80 seats in the 200-member parliament. Former PM Babiš has signaled plans to form a single-party minority government, potentially supported by the far right. And party's campaign focused on expanding welfare and ending military assistance to Ukraine. Babiš, calling himself a Trumpist, celebrated what he described as a historic result in the high point of his political career. Former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš said his party aims to save Europe and win future elections, stressing that it remains clearly pro-European and pro-NATO.
And within the budget, European, of course, there is a lot of money for Ukraine. The Czech Republic contributes every year to the European budget. We pay about 2.5 billion euros, and this money is used for Ukraine. But if the current government has created debts larger than those of the previous 3.5 governments, and there is no money for medicines, we are helping the Union, and the Union is helping Ukraine, I think that is clear.
Outgoing Prime Minister Petr Fiala's Together alliance placed second, followed by its coalition partner STAN. 6 parties in total crossed the electoral threshold, including the Pirate Party, the far-right Freedom and Direct Democracy, and the new right-wing Motorist Party.
Podat ruku, podepsat vám knížku a že mě taky můžete říct. A máme čísla, která nám řada zemí a já lidem říkám, není.
Media reports suggest two potential kingmakers following the Czech election, the far-right Freedom and Direct Democracy Party, led by Tokyo-born Tomio Okamura, shares Anno's opposition to EU's Green Deal and migration policies. It is strongly anti-Ukraine aid and calls for tougher checks on refugees. Okamura, a controversial figure facing trial over xenophobic campaigning, advocates ending military support for Kiev and promoting peace talks with Moscow. The Conservative Motorist Party, led by Petro Masinka, a former spokesman for the ex-president, Václav Klaus, entered parliament for the first time. Originally a protest movement against the EU's plan to phase out combustion engines, it backs lower taxes, less regulation. Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala said that he will continue to keep the Czech Republic a part of the West, following a loss in the Czech parliamentary elections.
But one thing I want to say clearly to the public, whatever role I may be in, I will not give up the fight against populism and extremism. I will not give up the fight. I will not give up the fight for the fate of this country. Let no one expect me to resign or to be tired. I have been used to my whole life holding even minority opinions, but I will fight to make sure this country is democratic, free, a solid part of the West. And I will fight for this also for the sake of our children and grandchildren.
At least 22 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in violent protests that have rocked Madagascar over the past weeks. The unrest led by a youth-driven movement called Gen Z erupted has intensified, with near-daily demonstrations targeting President Andrei Rajoelina's government.
They cracked down on us here. We fought back. Then we sought refuge in the hospital because we were sure they wouldn't come in since there are newborns and sick people there. But they came and attacked us inside the hospital grounds. One of our friends was hit. We don't know if he made it.
Protesters have flooded the streets demanding Rajoelina's resignation, citing a chronic water shortage, repeated power outages, and worsening living conditions as symbols of government failure. In the capital, crowds clashed with police, throwing stones as security forces retaliated with tear gas to disperse them. In response to growing unrest, President has dissolved his cabinet earlier this week and called for dialogue. But protest leaders have rejected the move as inadequate, maintaining that only his resignation will meet their demands. Demonstrations have also spread to other cities, such as where thousands have marched in defiance, vowing to continue their campaign until meaningful reforms are enacted. Netflix has come under fire after Elon Musk urged consumers to cancel subscriptions, accusing the streaming giant of pushing what he called woke content aimed at children. The controversy gained momentum when the hashtag #CancelNetflix went viral, echoing earlier cultural battles the company has faced. Musk, who owns social media platform X, amplified the campaign with posts to his 227 million followers, writing "Cancel Netflix for the health of your kids." The fallout was swift on Wall Street. Netflix shares slid 4.3% in just 1.5 days. The company's market capitalization dropped around $15 billion over the week. The stock lost nearly 5%, which is its steepest weekly decline since April, while the broader market rose 2% to new highs. By comparison, peers like Amazon and Meta advanced, leaving Netflix as the notable laggard in big tech. Despite the turbulence, analysts remain broadly optimistic. Netflix projects third quarter, revenue and earnings per share well above Wall Street estimates. The company expects ad sales to nearly double to $3 billion next year, supported by strong engagement in flagship shows and live sports. Analysts at Oppenheimer reiterated an outperform rating, suggesting the backlash may have limited long-term impact. Netflix will report earnings on October 21st, with investors watching closely to see if the boycott leaves any measurable mark. Well, that's all World DNA for today. Our continuous coverage on West Asia continues on the other side. U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line for Gaza, which has also been shared with Hamas. We'll get you all the details on that on the other side. Keep watching WION World is One.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
As the world revisits Mahatma Gandhi's legacy, we decode the different depictions of India's father of the nation on screen.
Hello sir, police भर्ती का रिजल्ट कब तक आएगा?
Meet Indian actor Vishal Jetwa as he talks about Homebound's big journey to Oscars. And rejoice in the celebrations of Indian festivals with musical duo Salim and Suleiman Merchant. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
On Inside South Asia this week, cricket field turns into battleground. India-Pakistan sports diplomacy hopes crumble. Pakistan occupied Kashmir on the boil again. Islamabad unleashes its oldest suppression brutalities.
Nara, 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 Kashmir!
And Nepal has a new living goddess. 2-year-old Aryatara steps into divinity. This and much more on Inside South Asia.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
As the world revisits Mahatma Gandhi's legacy, we decode the different depictions of India's father of the nation on screen.
Hello sir, police भर्ती का रिजल्ट कब तक आएगा?
Meet Indian actor Vishal Jetwa as he talks about Homebound's big journey to Oscars. And rejoice in the celebrations of Indian festivals with musical duo Salim and Suleiman Merchant. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times. Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Diksha Bisla. Let's start with the headlines. The Israeli army said on Sunday that it had intercepted a missile fired from Yemen, from where Houthi rebels frequently launch attacks they describe as a response to the Israeli offensive in Gaza. US President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line for Gaza. Once Hamas confirms, a ceasefire will be effective immediately and a hostage prisoner exchange will begin, setting the stage for the next phase of withdrawal. In an interview, President Trump reveals his behind-the-scenes diplomacy with Israeli Prime Minister. Says he told Netanyahu that he had no choice but to be fine with his peace plan for Gaza. A federal judge temporarily blocks Trump administration from deploying 200 Oregon National Guard troops to the city of Portland. This as demonstrators gathered outside ICE headquarters in the city. Ukraine claims 2 Russian drones struck trains at a station in Ukraine's northern Sumy region, killing 1 person and injuring about 30 others. Officials accuse Moscow of deliberately hitting passenger trains to isolate frontline towns. The party of billionaire former Prime Minister Andrej Babis has toppled the Czech general election. Babis, a self-proclaimed Trumpist, may lead a minority government backed by the far-right parties. Massive protests in Georgia after a ruling party claims victory in local elections. Police fired tear gas and water cannons at anti-government protesters who tried to enter the presidential palace after opposition's call to save democracy. Kim Jong-un says North Korea has deployed special assets, and this in response to what he called Washington's arms buildup in the South. The US stations nearly 28,500 troops in the South Korea to fend off military threats from the nuclear-armed North. Indian IPO market is poised for a record-breaking month with new listings expected to rake in over $5 billion, including major offerings from Tata Capital and LG's Indian arm, as investor appetite surges despite global volatility. Donald Trump says that Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line for Gaza, which has also been